Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Today, I am going to reveal all. I'm going to show you what's behind the kimono and just get, unfortunately, uncomfortably uh, nude. And no, we're not in for that type of segment, but I am bearing all today because I am going to show you how to be incredibly funny by the end of this video in most situations. Finally, putting a framework to something that seems so amorphous that there's no way that you can follow a systematic structure to be a funny cunt. And excuse my language, I am Australian, and that is part of our day to day vernacular. And for those of you that don't know who I am, my interview, I'm Australia's number one street interviewer. My interview channel is called Mr. Sick Cunt, which is, like I said, Australia's number one street interviewer with a billion views now, all based on humor and following this framework that I have now used for, well, longer than the period that I've been doing this channel. But let's say just talking about the channel for 5 years for results in all various situations and finding a way to make every interaction with an unwilling stranger into something memorable and humorous. And this is the framework that I've iteratively. This is the framework. This is the framework that I've iteratively built over all of these years that I want to give to you because I know the value in funny is paramount. Even Paramount could do with more funny on their channel. Ignore that. Why is funny important? Well, I think it's dead obvious, but let me try and spell that part out for you as well, just in case you don't know. What's the point of me spending the 25, 30 minutes watching this video to be funny? What the hell is that going to do for me? Like, why do I want to be funny? Well, the people that are generally funny are more valuable in the world. Think about anyone that you come across that has a little bit of sense of humor that is outside of the banal, monotonous, boring, corporate, just jargon-based, garbage, uh, filler conversations that you have with anyone. You meet a person and they're just generally funnier. They are someone you gravitate towards. They are someone you want to talk to more. So immediately, having a level of funniness in your repertoire already is valuable, regardless of whether you do anything else, right? Just being funnier in those situations is valuable in general. It provides access. People that are funnier because they're valuable, they have access to more people, network, things, events, da da da. Being funny in many situations has given me access because I've been able to develop a relationship with someone and they have given me access to something I wouldn't have if I wasn't able to develop that relationship, which was grounded in the foundation of being funny when meeting them in the first place. One of the biggest one of the biggest values of funny is rapid connection. Now, picture back to any time you've had a very boring meeting. If you're a corporate drone of this world, you've had a meeting. Picture back to a time maybe you've been at some event. You've gone to like your partner has taken you to a catch up with two other people you've never met in your life, and or picture a time where you've just ended up at a place, gone for a coffee. You're just standing in line, and that person that's approached you has kind of flirted with the world. They're just a little bit joyous. Like instead of going, "Hey, what's happening? Were you just waiting in line?" No, no, I was just casing the situation to see how I could rob the store. Immediately, you've developed rapid connection, and it's those people that are like always flirting with the world that have a level of baseline sense of humor. They just develop these rapid connections and their quick wit, seemingly quick wit. It doesn't have to be. There is a framework around it because I've had to do it so often for so long that I know that you can build a framework and then leverage off that to just be called quick witted. They have these rapid connections, and the rapid connections are those with insane value. I will bring up the framework because you may just want to have a peruse while I keep going through some of the other points. Another big value of humor, adding humor to your arsenal to have as a weapon, is people. Wow, that's the first time I've had to sneeze in a live. I was like, what happens here? Do we continue? Do we just assume that didn't take place? Or were you thinking about me so much that I don't even have to talk about it? This is just weird. Why do I have to even mention the fact that there was a sneeze? Anyhow, let's carry on. Another important byproduct of being funny is you do get paid more. You do get paid more. Funny people get paid more. There is statistics around the funniest people in the office, as long as they have the same level of skill, end up getting paid more. If people say laughter is the best medicine, it allows in a very, very serious, a world geared towards everyone having to take everything so seriously. Everything becomes such a big boulder sitting on top of your head. Having the ability to laugh and make others laugh is in itself a medicine, is in itself such a valuable part of the lived experience. And first, foremost, and probably the end bookend to this whole thing is the funniest people attract more members of the opposite sex. The funniest people attract more members of the opposite sex. And if you haven't seen that take place in the world, I don't know what fucking rock you've been living under, because if you speak to women, say, what sort of guys are the most attractive? Oh, he's got to be funny. And then it goes dark, handsome, all the kind of tall, dark, handsome, whatever other criteria comes in. But the funny, having a sense of humor, it's always in the top 3, 4 criteria. So if that is the baseline of a world where we can't seem to find a partner and we want to find ways to connect with other women and try and attract members of the opposite sex, and I'm talking from a guy's perspective because I can't be talking from a girl's perspective. It is a little bit more challenging for me. But I'm talking from a guy's perspective, that the ability to attract members of the opposite sex, if that is something that you find difficult to do, well, funny is probably one of the biggest levers you can pull, because all women want a generally funny person. The funnier guys attract members of the female team. Okay, so I think that gives you enough perspective on why spending your time to be funnier or learn the art of humor or develop a sense of humor, a framework around the sense of humor. Why is that valuable? Well, there is your list. Okay. Today we're on the coffee, not the sparkling water. For those of you who watch these lives, I have decided I don't want to continuously urinate or have to urinate while in the midst of a live. If I do a couple back to back, coffee is the safer bet. Okay. And now I'm adding something to the lives, and that is the ability to actually annotate or kind of draw over what I'm talking about. So hopefully it makes it a little bit better. We're improving here. We're going places, people. This show is becoming something else. And before I continue to showcasing the framework for you, if you do want assistance and you go through this and you go, can't be bothered doing this myself, Jaski.me, Jaski.me is your website. You can jump on there, one-to-one transformation, and humor can be one of the skills that we can build into your repertoire. And believe me, investing in your communication skills in a world where they are becoming more and more valuable is one of the greatest investments you can make. And if you don't do it through me or that platform, please find a way to do it, because it is becoming more and more valuable. Just going to wipe my nose so I don't sneeze again. I don't know if that prevents sneezing, but we'll bring everything to these lives, even cleaning your nose and making things happen. All right, let's go. Let's make a start into this framework which I have built over these many years, and I use it every single day while working what in the world just generally, but also as a street interviewer, also as a stand-up comedian, also in the corporate world where I have used cold calling to across the businesses generate over $90 million. That is not an exaggeration. That is true facts that it's been done mostly through building sales teams and cold calling. And humor is one of the biggest weapons I have in all three of those facets. And this is the framework that I try and use. And this is a framework you can use when funny seems elusive. You can now break it down into a sequence that you can follow. Okay, enough pretext. Let's get on it. Okay, first and foremost, here is my little highlighter thing. No, I want a drawing thing. Here we go. Red's terrible. Let's go blue. Okay, first and foremost on this list, before I even jump into it, the way to remember it, the acronym that I have is one of the most random acronyms, but I'm hoping because it is so random, it is easy to remember. Think of it back to the sparkling water. Think of it as urination. Piss. Adaku. Piss, Adaku, ADACU. Now, if you can remember piss with a triple S, Adaku, that will keep this framework at top of your mind. I'm going to try and get through it. It doesn't have to be super quick, but I'm going to try and get through it so we're not here on this video for the end of time, okay? First and foremost is, and the most important, and this is probably one that you can just focus on. This is the one lever you can pull, this one thing you can look out for in every single conversation if you want to make that conversation funny is POV. Now, I know all your minds that are in the gutter, POV, I know what you're thinking about, and it's, well, it could be one of those videos if you stay till the end. No, it's not going to be one of those videos, okay? I'm not talking about that POV. I'm talking about point of view, okay? I mean, that is that POV. Anyway, point of view. And what you are trying to do, and what I try to do in conversations is to arrive at uncovering a person's unique point of view. Okay? So let me circle this one. Oh, that's a horrible job. Here we go. Let me circle this one. So what we're trying to do here is uncover a person's unique point of view. And another way to look at that is, what is the person's worldview? And if that's still a little bit too esoteric and confusing for you, we are trying to uncover what is a person's unusual opinion, right? Usual opinion, not interesting. If everyone's regurgitating the same opinion, not that interesting. But an unusual opinion, typically an unusual point of view, because that is a little bit more global than you're more in the clouds than you are in the dust, in the sand, in the, whatever, on the ground. It is better. The more global point of view you can try and extract, the worldview on some perspective, that is essentially a platform for you to a playground for you to play on. Take it in whatever direction you want. You have got the structure of where that conversation is going to be funny, right? You've found the frame. You've entered the world of Narnia. Now you can play, because that is going to be incredibly funny. And I'll explain to you why. A unique point of view is what they call the game in improv, meaning you are trying to find that interesting thing that you can now build upon. Okay. So in this case, someone says to you, you know what, man? There should be a world without government. Okay. Somehow you arrive at that conversation. There should be a world without government. Okay. Quite a unique, unusual point of view, an unusual opinion. And regardless of where you take that, it is really hard for you to fuck that up without that becoming funny. Okay? because now you've got to something that is quite unusual and interesting. And a lot of the times when it comes to humor, if you can arrive, I I, I got this from a Dave Chappelle quote. Dave Chappelle quote, one of the greatest comedians, Dave Chappelle, mentioned, if you can't be funny, be interesting. And how do you find interesting? Interesting is interest in something that isn't common, right? That's interesting. So you found that, you've got there. You're now at a precipice of something that is unusual. Where do you take that? Well, there's a whole framework of how to take the game into different areas. Like what parts of the swings do you go on in that playground? Where do you now walk off to next to have the most fun? What string do you pull with out of all these? There's a lot of there's a framework around that. But the main thing is you're in the playground. You're there. So arrive at the unique point of view, and the rest is hilarious. There should be a world without government. Bro, I agree. Like, imagine you could drive your car as fast as you want. No one's going to ping you. There's no demerit points. There's no there's no police. Is there police, bro? Is there police? Oh, I don't know. Is there police? Do we have police without government? Do you know what I mean? You're getting into a humorous conversation. And if you've met someone for the first time, you want to make this funny, try and arrive at that unique point of view or perspective. And I guarantee you, more often than not, that is all I am trying to achieve in my conversations with someone, because I know once I've arrived there, I have a multitude of lanes that I can walk down. And then it's about getting the best one possible. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is for you to try and extract that unique point of view. Oh man, I think I think every person should be an entrepreneur. Okay. Strange. But we're into something. We can get we can take this funny. We can then you can take it wherever you want. And more often than not, you will not make a wrong step. Doesn't matter. You can ask anything from there. And it's likely to be funny. Oh man, the best job is an electrician. I just think electricians are the best. Okay? Find a unique point of view, uh, opinion, worldview, and the more overarching umbrella perspective as opposed to a more granular perspective, the more funnier, because you have just more room to play with, and it is a bigger point of view. And the bigger the point of view, the funnier it is. Okay? I've got another example in there, but I think I've given you enough examples. Let's move on to number 2. All right. Number 2, in the framework of how to make situations and how to make yourself seen as funny. Okay. Pinpoint a person's unique skill. Okay. And the more granular you can get on the skill, the absolute funnier it becomes. What you will start to realize as I go through this framework is sometimes the funny is in the very, very minute details, the minutiae. The funny is in the specifics. The specifics are what make things hilarious. Now, I said in the first one, the point of view, you got to be in the clouds. And that's probably contrasting what I'm saying in all of the other parts of this framework. But what you realize is if you want a categorical rule, the more niche, granular, specific, detailed you can get, the funnier the situations become. So if we're talking about skill, okay, it reminds me of a very recent conversation I had was with this guy who is a guy who works for a government council putting up signs, like your no stopping, no standing, don't park here, stop, give away, all of those signs. And in that moment, I could have maneuvered and said, "Hey, let's try and leverage a very unique point of view, because of course this person has unique points of view because he's seeing the world from a very unique point of view. But I thought what's even more funny and what I find interesting, it comes down to what you find interesting. It doesn't have to be, or it can be what other people find interesting. But typically, the thing you find interesting, the thing you find funny, will be reflected by your inherent reaction to the response, that it will become funnier because you're finding it funny. Whereas if you're trying to curate what other people are going to think it's funny is because you're trying to make other people laugh, your internal reaction is not going to be as uh, as authentic to showcase the laughter and your joy and all your, vibrating at that feel. Wow, it just makes the whole situation funny. So what you find the funniest is what you should double down into, right? But in that case, I was like, oh well, let's break down this skill. So tell me, you you put up signs for a job. What does it take to make a really, really good sign? Like, what does it take to go, I fucking nailed this sign? Now, what does it take for you to look back at a job you just did and go, that was a fucking work of art, bro? That was a work of art. What does it take? And it got into it, and that in itself just got into a hilarious, uh, a hilarious fictional discussion now, because he wasn't really talking about what it takes to make a good sign, because it's such a dumb question to ask. 'Cause, what is the answer going to be? But the fact that we're in the game, we're talking about something that it is such a minute detail of such a very unusual job of a very obvious outcome is in itself funny. So what skill does it take to be a really good signsman? Like, what does it take? Do you have to have, like, can people with glasses do it? Like, do you have to have perfect vision? Right? Is it, do you need to, like, have really good ability to measure that it's straight? Like, you got to be really good with the spirit level. You got to have stable hands. What does it take? Like, are you ever worried about, like, heights? Do, what if you have a fear of heights? Can you still be a good signs person? Do you know what I mean? You've got down to really breaking. It just made me laugh. Fear of heights. I should have asked that. That was actually a great question. I didn't get into that. But what does it take to do the thing you do really well? Okay. And skill, as granular, niche, and as specific as you can get, is where the humor is. And then what you have as a bonus, or uh, another leap you can take to build on the laughter, is once you've identified the skill or the ability this person has. Okay, it's some unique ability, or something that this person does really well, and it doesn't have to be like a good skill. It can just be a ridiculous skill. It doesn't matter. Once met a person who can twist their tongue, like contort it in unusual ways. Great. I used to finish my show. A lot of my live shows finish with finding someone with a unique skill. And typically it is a ridiculous skill. It's just a very, very random skill. But once you find that, now if you want to build it into something that's absolutely hilarious and just leverage the work you've already done, translate it to an adjacent industry, or move it into another a fictional situation. Right? Now, this sign person, let's stick with the sign person. Excuse me. They stick with this sign person. He has an incredible skill to make things aligned. Now, let's just brainstorm. You're very good at making things very straight. Now, would you be really good at being the policeman at the Mardi Gras? Right? You're trying to ensure people are not straight. Okay? We are not. That's such a ridiculous, dumbass example. But you are now translating that to an adjacent fictional situation, or a situation where that leap makes sense. You're very good at keeping things incredibly straight. Well, I don't know. Why don't you try furniture, dude? Like, have you ever thought about furniture being a career? Like, that's such an invaluable skill. What about what about like a job that requires a guillotine, right? You could just prevent them. You just find where can you translate that to also being increasing the humor in a situation. Because what you want to do is get to the part that's funny and then just build on it. Make it funnier and funnier. Move it to an adjacent, typically unrelated fictional space. Okay? Let's change the color before we get to number 3. Okay. The third part of the how to be a funny person framework is specifics. And I feel like I've kind of harped on that already. Okay. But it is its own framework because sometimes it doesn't marry up to just skills. But what I've already given you kind of an elongated rant on this whole thing, a very elongated spiel on the importance of this is the specifics. Is ask for the very, 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 very minute details of things. The humor lies in the very, very minute details. For example, if someone you meet is homeless, go, hey, what? Well, I mean, don't do this. But I'm saying if we were to be in this situation, what kind of what kind of cardboard boxes do you look for? Like what level of thickness should they be? Like are we looking at ribbed ones? Are they more like better for stability? Are we looking at ones that are that are easy to dispose so you can change, like there's an ability to change? What about are we looking at like boxes that typically don't have stickers? Is it better for that? What about trolleys? What about trolleys? Like, do you want a larger size to store? You can get into the very, very small specifics. Do you want the trolley to be steel? Like, is it good to be sturdy? Are we looking for one that's a little bit more mobile, like more lubricated wheels? So the the specifics of the thing make the thing funny, and I feel like I've said that to death, right? So you and it's not only about the objects or items. You can get to the specifics, and I think one of the funniest specifics are asking the specifics of what the person would do in a situation. Hey, if you were going to go buy drugs, how do you approach that person? Like, how are you approaching someone if you are going out to buy drugs? Do you think it's better to be like shoulders back? Do you think it's better to be a little bit hunched? Do you think you just part, do like the hair part? Is that a little bit more confronting? You want someone to look a little bit scruffy, right? You don't want to have your hair perfectly gelled like that. Who goes to buy drugs with perfectly gelled hair? Like, I'm imagining you want to scruff it up a little bit, like scruff that up. Is it better to put some? You're getting into the very, very small specifics. That is fucking hilarious. It's the funniest shit. And go back and listen to some of your favorite comedians. Listen to their jokes. It goes so deep on the specifics and then continues to keep prodding those specifics as much as you can. Because once you're in the funny, stay in the funny for as long as you possibly can. Okay, we're on to number 4. So as you can see, we are about to finish the urination part of this acronym. So we are in the PISS, triple S, PISS. Now the third S in the PISS is self. Self means bring it back onto yourself. And why bring it back onto yourself? Well, there's a multitude of reasons, but the primary reason to bring it back onto yourself is you can shit on yourself a lot harder than you can shit on anyone else. And sometimes comedy, you want to play it in an arena of being able to, especially in a space where you're doing it on the fly, you want to be able to be in a situation where you can push that line as much as possible without worrying about the risks, right? And where can you not worry as much about the risks? on what people say, or if someone gets offended, like comedy, you can go past the line. People do it all the time. And then, you're in hot water. So bring it upon yourself, because you can give yourself as much grief as you want and no one's really going to care. You can shit on yourself all day. People go, haha, whatever. Self-deprecating humor. One of the one of the things that everyone leans upon, because you can go as hard on yourself as possible. And then what that also allows you to do is then switch the spotlight onto the other person, because you've now built up so much goodwill that you can then target the other person and they would be okay with it. If you go in and just target the other person, and I'm not saying target them maliciously, that's not the point of comedy at all. We're not trying to be malicious. A lot of banter is just banter, and you roast the shit out of someone because you're in the moment of banter. But at least they know that you are able to do it to yourself first. Okay? I'll repeat that. Very important to be able to point the spotlight at yourself and have the ability to deprecate on yourself, defecate on yourself. Don't do that. That's strange. It's very weird. Very, very weird. I don't even know how you do that. Like upward defecate. Anyway, again, see, go into the specifics. How do you do that? Specifics makes it funny. There's your in-person meta example. Meta. So if you can go onto yourself, you can then go onto other people. Okay? So that's one. Self. Also, there are why talk about yourself? It takes the pressure off someone else needing to carry the conversation. You can carry it by talking about yourself, positioning how you would be in those situations. How would you respond? And what would it, all that kind of stuff. Very, very important. And then similarly, what self does is it allows the other person to know more about you. And why do we want to do that? Because knowing more about you is how you build connections to now be able to leverage it for more funny. Okay? And there's many other reasons, but that's the three primary ones to bring it back upon yourself. And you know yourself very well. I don't know myself that well that I didn't know I could say that sentence. But you do know yourself well enough to know the specific things you can talk about yourself. Okay? That's a confusing sentence, but I think you get it. Okay? And how do you flip it upon yourself? Whatever the hell you're talking about, you put yourself in that situation. And the easiest way to put yourself in that situation is to talk about why or why not you are suited or potentially terrible at the thing in question. So if you are talking about swimming, good man, I would be so bad at being a lifeguard because I just hate getting wet. Do you think I would make a good lifeguard? Like, do you think my structure, like, would it work? And by bringing it upon yourself, you can then take that extra step. I'm kind of more designed to be a marathon runner that disappears off into the distance. I just don't feel like these gangly things are good for the water. You can kind of always take the piss out of yourself, make a joke upon yourself that makes it okay for the other person to laugh. Okay? Makes it okay for someone else to laugh because you're making fun of yourself. And you'll notice, if you pay attention, some of the funniest people you meet out in the world, they're not comedians, they don't have to be any of that, just generally very funny people, they always find a way to use self-deprecating humor to build incredible amounts of rapport. And you'll see it in the corporate world. Had I been on time for this meeting, imagine how productive we'd be. But you know what? I was busy just hanging out and looking at TikTok during my lunch break. And it's all done in this level of jest. But they'll bring it back upon themselves. Everyone will laugh. Tension alleviated. Connection. Everyone feels connected. Everyone just has that momentary release. And humor has an incredible power as one of the only things that you say certain words and an involuntary reaction happens in other people. They laugh involuntarily. It's magical. And then in a crowd setting, it's like a level of hypnosis. you're hypnotizing a bunch of people to laugh at those same sort of words. Okay, onto the second page. And these are very smaller items because these are less likely to be the primary punch that you have when you're going into the boxing match of trying to make something funny. These are the ones you try and lean on. Sorry, I will caveat that there are some here that are very, very important and should be in the primary role. But more often than not, the other ones are going to get you the biggest bang for your buck. If you're trying to be funny, those are the ones in the piss category. Point of view, self, uh, specifics, skill specifics, self, point of view. They're the ones that get you 90. Well, again, this is just arbitrary numbers. I don't know, I'm just making them up. 90% of the value in most situations. Okay. I don't know why my nose has decided to run in this one instant. It hasn't had any problems throughout the day. It's the allergy I have to looking at myself. It's not true. I love looking at myself. Okay. Now we're up to the Adaku part. ADACU. Okay. First one is act out. Okay. Act out. Now, for those of you that know a little bit about the world of comedy, you will know what act out means. For those of you that don't understand that word, I mean, your IQ is concerning to me, but that's okay. We can't all be geniuses like the one you are seeing in front of the camera. We can't all be like that. A thick mustache indicates your level of genius. Now, an act out. An act out is, well, as the word states, but let me make it simple. An act out is acting out the situation. And what that is playing the role, is actually playing the role or playing out or mimicking that situation and simulating it. Okay. Asking someone to simulate that situation that's being communicated through words. So let's use an example. Hey, uh, you were telling me that you're about to have this interview with your boss about, sorry, not with your boss. Why would you have an interview with your boss? That doesn't make any sense. You're about to have this interview. Let me start again. You were telling me that you were about to have this really important interview for a HR role that you are looking to apply for. What are we role playing? Let's role play it. You come in as yourself, because that's what you want to practice. I'll try to be your prospective employer. Let's give it a go. Hey, Mary, how are you? And there, you're off and you're acting it out. And then you play out that scenario. And the reason this makes the situation humorous is now because you can pretend to be a character. And now that character lends itself to doing whatever the hell you want. If you're good with accents, if you have the ability to uh, uh, actually act in a way where you're like using your body to be a different type of character, or the fact that now you're a fly on the wall into a situation that you were in the situation talking about it, but now you're a fly on the wall into this pretend situation. That in itself is hilarious. Okay, it is funnier to see the situation play out as opposed to talking about it. Okay, so many times in an interview where I'm having a conversation about a thing, but we can't really see the thing happen. And we would love to see it take place. Well, the next best thing is to pretend like that thing is actually happening. Hey, one day I would love to be on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's one of my greatest like ambitions. It would be a desire, like it'd be a dream. I love that podcast. One day I would love to be on Joe Rogan. Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we pretend you are on Joe Rogan right now? I'll be Joe Rogan and you pretend to be the guest. Let's act it out. Hey, what's going on? Like, then you're there. You're in that situation. And that is way funnier than just talking about it. What would you do on the Joe Rogan podcast? What would you say? What if Rogan asked you? Still good, but let's take it a step above by putting yourself in that situation. Action. Not one of those like boom, like the little the clapper things. Action. Now, action and dynamic movement, I'm going to categorize as one. They are two distinct things, and you can look at them separately because you got the notes here. They've been on the screen the whole time, but I'm going to categorize them as one. And I'll tell you why, because essentially they're talking about the same thing. They are talking about putting movement into the situation. Okay, taking the conversation again, like the act out is now taking a conversation, which is just words, you're talking to each other, and you're moving it into you're still using words, but now psychologically you're moving it into being in that situation. Hey, we were talking about the thing, but let's pretend that thing is happening. Okay. And that's one way of stepping away from the words to make it more dynamic and interesting, because that type of conversation is way funnier, way more interesting, way more memorable. Okay, you want to make these things memorable, but you can also have an action or have some movement, make it dynamic, take them to the thing. So I once interviewed this lady and she told me she'd lost the phone, and at that moment I could have gone, no, sorry, let me add a little bit more context. So I met this lady. She told me she lost her phone. And I said, wow, what do you think happened? Well, I actually don't know. I was walking through a store and then I saw this lady and this lady took the phone. Oh, so you know who that lady is? Yeah, I saw her. So at that moment in that interview, I've got a couple of options really. I mean, I've got more than a couple of options, but a couple of options came to mind. Let me dive deeper into finding out what actually happened. We could go into the specifics. One of the frameworks I talked about much earlier in this conversation. I could go into the specifics of what took place. Okay. Or number two, I could go in search for that phone. So I said, hey, why don't we go see if we find it? And that is just way more funnier. Why? Because you are now, obviously it's funny because it's such a dumb thing for an interviewer to do. For someone who's come in to interview you, to talk about you, now is going to be the Sherlock Holmes to find your phone. The likelihood of that is worse than negligible, right? But it's incredibly funny to meet a stranger and then go on actual search for the phone. So but there is there is the movement that a lot of conversations allow, but we don't do the movement because I don't know, we just don't think about it. But the movement in itself takes away the pressure from the words, and now the situation in itself is incredibly memorable and funny. Someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I'm really into agriculture. I'm studying to be an agriculturalistism." And then you go, "Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, why don't we go look at some plants and you tell me what you think could be wrong with each of them, because some of them don't look that healthy. Why don't we go to a bush and see which trees you'd like to keep? You just move the situation, and that's dynamic movement. Action is a smaller subset to that, where it's a facet of the movement, but it's a movement that you can make. So let me explain the difference. Now I've told you about the movement. You're taking a conversation and you're moving it somewhere. I'm always thinking of how can I move this conversation, because that makes it incredibly hilarious, and because I'm producing it for it to be viewed online. So a lot of people, to keep their attention, you've got to have movement. So I'm weary of the fact that if someone's watching this, I want to make it interesting for them. Movement makes it interesting. What is action? Action is doing something yourself that the conversation lends itself to, which in itself is funnier than the conversation. So, for example, one of the interviews I did, I sent this person into a bar and I said, can you please go explore the bar and tell me, can you please go explore the bar and tell me what's inside? And he left his cigarette with me. And I knew in that moment, the audience knows, I know, I've never smoked a cigarette. So I don't actually know how to hold the cigarette. And again, it goes down into the specifics. But the specifics here are using an action to showcase the specifics. So I'm kind of like, do I do it like one of these? Am I doing it in two fingers? Am I holding it in my palm? Am I putting it far away because I don't want to inhale any of it? Do I like keep it behind my head? Do I like dangle it downwards so the smoke goes away? There's room for actions. There's room for small facial expression actions. So in a lot of interviews, I try and think of what is the expression here that could, one, unlock a greater outcome or a greater bit of information from the party I'm interviewing. But secondly, the expression could say way more than the words, like some kind of action, facial action, physical action. Someone tells me, I'm in a little bit of trouble. All right, man, I'm on it. Like you don't even have to say that. Your stance indicates you're ready to protect them. So action is a big one, okay? And it's very easy to do because you're trying to impart an unusual response to the words, okay? Now, down to our last two. And these are what I consider get out of jail cards. When you've got fucking nothing else, you're stuck. You've tried the point of view. You've tried the skills. You've tried the specifics. You've brought it back upon yourself. You've thought about movements. You've tried to have an action. You've even gone into act out. And none of those are really working. And I get some of those situations where I'm like, I am at my fucking wit's ends as to where to go with this. So the two crowbar approaches that I have, and one of them is to go contrarian. And I've put the king of contrarian, perspectives or getting people riled up is our man Piers Morgan. It's a reminder for me to go. I've exhausted all other options. I don't have much else left here. So what can I do to wake the sleeping dog of the interviewee that I'm standing in front of? I'm not getting anything. So what I do in that situation is take the very opposite point to what they are saying in that entire conversation and try and use it as a trigger to wake them up, to really extract a little bit of energy. Someone says, I'm a huge believer in God. I've heard God is bullshit, right? I'm not saying that that's my opinion, all right? But just taking a complete contrarian view to them, sometimes when you can't get anything, just spark something. What? What did you say? Huh? It sparks something out of them. And that's where you can now have access to all of your other frameworks. You have access to the rest of the tools in your toolkit, which were not working before. They were not getting the result. But now that you've evoked this response, they are now all back on the table. A huge contrarian swing can sometimes become the conversation in itself. And I've done that in the past, being the contrarian when I've really thought the opinion that I want to share in this. It's very rare because I try not to share an opinion, but this is the opinion that I'm going to share because I firmly believe in this opinion and what this person is saying I don't agree with. And it's okay because I can't extract anything else. And this in itself will be interesting. I met this person who was very, very left-leaning, so left-leaning that I think he was about to fall over on the left side. And he said there's not one single rich person that is admirable. They're all dickheads. Every rich person is a dickhead. And I took the complete opposite opinion. And that was the entirety of the conversation. That invoked this, that awakened this energy, this tension, because he obviously felt it, and it was fucking entertaining. It was really good. And was it veering towards funny? It was funny because of his perspective. It was used unique point of view. So there's a POV there. But the contrarian approach there was important. And finally, to Hail Mary when nothing else is working. Or sometimes, to be honest, I use this, I sprinkle this throughout sometimes because I just find it hilarious, is during a conversation or at the end of some part of a conversation, just use a very jarring, adjacent, kind of within the bounds of what you're talking about, but a very random statement and typically posed as a question can make that interaction just incredibly hilarious. Okay. So, for example, I was interviewing a very well known vegan and she was making her case. And I was like, fuck me, we're going to go down the same path of the same conversation. And that's not really what I'm interested in. And I took a swing and just said, what about chickens? We're still in the conversation. She wasn't talking about chickens. This had nothing to do with chickens being the primary part of the conversation. In fact, she was talking about pigs. But a tangential statement. They said, what do you mean? Fuck chickens. Like they're one animal that is disposable. Like the rest I do care, like I care about. But like chickens, come on. The only purpose they serve is to be eaten. And obviously I had a point of view to back that up, but like it doesn't matter if you do or not. The tangential strange statement will bring up so much laughter that I find them the funniest, right? So I sprinkle them here and there. And it's just to have this strange question that comes out of left field. And if you look at a lot of stand-up comedy, the weird turn and to capture a quick laugh is a strange, somewhat related, but a very unexpected statement. I was talking to a government worker and he was talking about planning and how housing, and I was like, fuck, this is a conversation that is going steeply downhill. So I took a swing and I said, what about cyclists? He said, what do you mean, what about cyclists? When you're planning, are you planning for how to get rid of them in this town planning? What do you mean get rid of them? I mean, sometimes I just want to knock them in the back of the head, don't you? So anyway, you can go wherever you want with that conversation, but it is the jarring statement that invites a lot of laughter. So that is the framework. That is what I use all the time to try and build out some of my conversations and get the best, funniest situations in person when I'm just out and about in interviews, in a corporate workplace, in my day-to-day interactions. This is a framework that now has become intuitive, so I know what to extract depending on what someone has said. But hopefully it's a framework you can experiment with. Take one or two things. Just try them. Point of view is one of the greatest ones. If you can just try and utilize, find the point of view when you're having a conversation with someone and you get to the unique point of view, unique worldview, strange, unusual opinion, that in itself will make you a very, very funny person if you do nothing else. So I have revealed what is behind the kimono, and you have seen everything that I haven't shown anybody else. And I hope by watching this video, it has made you a funnier, more valuable, more interesting person. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.